I was 16 when I started working at my family's bakery in Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous. We're talking 5 a.m. shifts, flour in my hair, and my clothes smelling like yeast no matter how many times I washed them. But my dad always said, "One day, this place will be yours." And I believed him. I skipped college so I could keep things running while my friends were off at frat parties and spring breaks in Florida. While they posted beach selfies, I was posting our daily specials on Facebook and praying someone would actually like them. Fast forward 12 years. I'd built relationships with every regular who walked through our door. I knew which old man wanted his cinnamon roll microwaved for exactly 12 seconds, which mom needed extra powdered sugar on her kid's donut, and which delivery guy would happily unload boxes if I handed him a fresh croissant. I broke my back, metaphorically and sometimes literally, for this bakery. And then, my dad dropped a bomb that made me question every single sacrifice I'd ever made. One rainy Tuesday morning, I walked into the kitchen to find my dad and my 23-year-old cousin Chloe sipping lattes like they were on some business retreat. Chloe, with her perfect blowout and fake lashes at 8 a.m., grinned at me like she'd just won the lottery. And in a way, she had. Dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sweetheart, I've decided Chloe's going to take over the bakery when I retire." Chloe, my Instagram influencer cousin, the same girl who once called bagels bread donuts on her story. I laughed, out loud, because I thought it was a joke. But Dad just kept talking. Something about fresh ideas and modern branding, and how Chloe's marketing degree would take us to the next level. My stomach turned. I'd been running this place since Chloe was still learning how to drive. I'd given up more birthdays, weddings, and vacations than I could count. And now, I was supposed to smile while he handed over my future to someone who'd never even cleaned an oven? I glanced at Chloe, and she actually winked at me. Not a friendly wink. The kind of wink that says, "I win, you lose." In that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to cry, scream, or throw a tray of muffins across the room. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. It started small. Little comments my dad would make when Chloe visited. Stuff like, "She's got a real eye for presentation," or, "We could use some of her fresh perspective around here." At first, I brushed it off. I mean, she was family, right? And sure, she could take a pretty picture of a latte, but I was the one making sure the milk wasn't expired. Then, last Thanksgiving, Chloe posted a healthy dessert reel on her Instagram, almond flour cupcakes with 0 sugar. Dad saw it and wouldn't shut up about how people want that now, and we should evolve with the times. I suggested adding a gluten-free option to the menu, but he waved me off. 2 weeks later, Chloe came in with the exact same idea, and suddenly it was brilliant. That was my first real, "what the hell?" moment. One afternoon, I was in the back prepping dough when I heard Dad and Chloe laughing up front. I peeked through the swinging door and saw her sitting in my usual spot behind the register, showing him a rebranding mood board on her laptop. My laptop. The one I use to do inventory. "Don't you think this logo looks so much cleaner?" she asked, scrolling through fonts that looked like they belonged on overpriced scented candles. Dad nodded like she'd just solved world hunger. Meanwhile, the register beeped. She hadn't even rung up the last customer. From then on, Chloe started showing up more often. Not to work, but to observe and get a feel for the place. She'd wander around with her phone, filming behind-the-scenes clips for her followers. Sometimes she'd stick her camera in my face while I was elbow-deep in dough, chirping, "Say hi to my followers." I wanted to say something unprintable, but Dad was always watching. It got to the point where I'd come in for my shift and find she'd rearranged displays or swapped out pastries for her own recipes. When I asked Dad about it, he'd just say, "She's experimenting." The kicker? One Saturday, my best friend Jenna came by for her usual coffee and muffin. She glanced at Chloe behind the counter and whispered to me, "Wow, she acts like she owns the place." That was the first time I realized maybe she already thought she did. It happened on a Friday afternoon right before the holiday rush. I'd been up since 4 a.m., baking nonstop because we had a catering order for a big law firm downtown. My hair was a mess, my apron was covered in flour, and my hands felt like they'd been through a cement mixer. Dad called me into the office. Chloe was already there, sitting in his chair like some CEO in a rom-com, scrolling through her phone. Dad cleared his throat. "So, I've made a decision about the future of the bakery." My stomach sank. He went on about how he was getting older, wanted to spend more time fishing, maybe finally take that RV trip with Mom. I nodded, trying to keep up, until he dropped the bomb. "I've decided to officially hand over management to Chloe starting next month." It was like the air got sucked out of the room. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I'd probably scream. "You're joking, right?" Dad shook his head. "Sweetheart, Chloe has a degree in marketing. She knows how to attract younger customers. You can still be assistant manager." Assistant manager. So, after 12 years of running this place, after every double shift, every holiday I'd missed, after breaking my back so he could just focus on the books, I was being demoted. Not for a stranger, but for my cousin who thought sourdough was a TikTok dance. Chloe finally looked up from her phone. "I'm so excited to work with you," she said, in that fake sweet tone people use when they're lying through their teeth. Something in me snapped. I pulled off my flour-covered apron, tossed it onto the desk, and said, "Good luck. You're gonna need it." Dad blinked like he didn't understand what I meant. "Wait, are you quitting?" I stepped toward the door. "No, Dad. I'm leaving. There's a difference." As I walked out, Chloe called after me. "Don't worry. I'll take good care of your little recipes." That was it. I didn't even look back. I just pushed open the door, the little bell jingled, and I walked straight into the cold December air with no plan, no job, and no intention of ever coming back. For the first week after I left, I just slept. 12 years of 4 a.m. alarms had caught up with me. Then one morning, over coffee at my kitchen table, I thought about something Jenna once said. Your croissants could win awards if people outside this neighborhood ever tasted them. That's when the idea hit me. I took my small savings, the someday vacation fund I'd been adding to for years, and bought a used food truck off Facebook Marketplace. It was dented, smelled faintly of onions, and had one broken window, but it was mine. My first day parked outside Ohio State's campus, I sold out before noon. Students lined up in the cold for my cinnamon twists and breakfast sandwiches. I posted a quick video on TikTok of me pulling a tray of golden croissants out of the oven. By the next morning, it had 2.3 million views. Meanwhile, back at the bakery, things weren't going quite so picture-perfect for Chloe. Customers started texting me screenshots of the new menu. Half the classics were gone, replaced by kale muffins and vegan brownies that looked like potting soil. Prices went up. Hours got cut. And from what I heard, half the staff quit after Chloe told them they weren't on brand. 3 weeks in, Jenna walked up to my food truck laughing so hard she was crying. She pulled out her phone and showed me Chloe's latest Instagram story. "Does anyone know where we can find a reliable baker ASAP?" Serious inquiries only. I nearly choked on my coffee. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. Chloe. "Hey, so Dad says things aren't working out the way we hoped. Maybe we could talk?" Me. "Sorry, I'm fully booked for the next lifetime." The more viral my truck went, the worse their reviews got. Dry muffins. Overpriced. Staff seemed miserable. One even said, "Bring back the old baker," and tagged me. I started parking the truck just a block away from the bakery. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. People would come out of Chloe's shop, take one bite, toss it, and walk straight over to my line. By month 2, I had enough money saved to hire 2 assistants and start planning a second truck. The cherry on top? Someone told me Chloe tried to make croissants herself and set off the fire alarm. Twice. By spring, my food truck wasn't just a campus favorite. It was a Columbus staple. Local news did a segment on me called From Family Fallout to Food Truck Fame. Orders poured in faster than I could bake. I had to buy a second oven just to keep up. Meanwhile, the bakery was dying. I didn't need inside info. The closed sign on their door every other day said enough. Jenna told me Chloe kept changing the menu every week, trying to chase trends. One week it was all keto. The next it was desserts inspired by crystals. Customers were confused, staff turnover was insane, and the place lost its cozy charm. The final blow came when the health inspector shut them down for a month. I'm not saying I laughed, but I'm not saying I didn't. Then one Thursday afternoon, as I was restocking the truck, I saw a familiar figure standing in line. My dad. He looked smaller somehow. Same old flannel jacket, but his shoulders were hunched, like the weight of everything had finally caught up. When he got to the front, he just said, "1 slice of apple pie, please." I slid it over without saying a word. He handed me a $20 bill and told me to keep the change. Then he stood there, awkward, holding the pie box like it might burn him. "You've done well for yourself," he said quietly. "Better than I ever imagined." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. That night, I got a call from him. He told me the bakery was closing for good. They'd sold the building to a real estate company. He didn't mention Chloe once. The weirdest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt done. By the end of the year, I had 2 trucks, a staff of 8, and a line every morning. My customers weren't just buying pastries. They were rooting for me. Some would say things like, "We're glad you didn't let them break you." Dad started showing up every few weeks, always as a customer, never as my father. It was like we both knew there was a conversation waiting to happen, but neither of us was ready to have it. It finally happened on a quiet Tuesday morning in October. I'd just finished setting up the truck when I saw Dad walking toward me. No line, no crowd, just him. He looked older. Not just in the gray at his temples, but in the way he carried himself. He waited until I'd poured myself a coffee, then asked, "Can we talk?" We sat at one of the picnic tables near the truck. He didn't touch the coffee I handed him. For a long moment, he just stared at his hands. "I was wrong," he said finally. "About everything. I thought Chloe could bring something to the bakery that you couldn't. But the truth is, you were the bakery." My throat tightened. I'd imagined this moment 100 times. Him admitting he made a mistake, apologizing. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt complicated. He went on about how he'd been blinded by the idea of modernizing and keeping up with trends, how he thought a degree would mean more than years of experience, and how he'd let family politics cloud his judgment. "I should have trusted you," he said, "and I'm sorry I didn't." I sipped my coffee, buying time. Part of me wanted to say, "Too late." Another part wanted to hug him. In the end, I just nodded and said, "I appreciate that." We sat there in silence, watching a couple of students walk by with their croissants. He smiled faintly and said, "They look happy." "They are," I replied, "and so am I." As he got up to leave, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an old photo. Me at 12 years old, standing on a chair in the bakery kitchen, my hands covered in flour, both of us laughing. He set it on the table and said, "No matter what happened, that was real." I still keep that photo in the truck, taped above the espresso machine. It's a reminder that even when people let you down, the good memories don't disappear. So here's my question for you. Would you forgive your dad if he chose someone else over you after years of your hard work? Or would you keep your distance even after an apology?